Hello and welcome to the Mets in the UK podcast, bringing you all things Mets from a UK perspective. As always, you can find us on all of the socials at Mets in the UK. That's Facebook, X, and Instagram. Or you can use the hashtag MITUK. Once again, shout out to all of our regular subscribers and listeners. If you are listening for the first time, do give us a like, a follow, a retweet, a subscribe, any of that good stuff to help us grow the podcast and bring you more Mets content across the UK, Europe, and beyond. Back to the classic lineup this week. I'm joined by Toria and Diva Cat herself, Rosie, making a special appearance. Toria, how are you doing this week?
I am good. I think emotionally and physically exhausted, but loving life. All is well. How are you doing?
I'm great, yeah. Just absolutely living on cloud nine at the moment with these Mets. It's absolutely something else. And those of you that are watching on YouTube, you can see I'm wearing my OMG shirt, courtesy of Steph, who sent it over from the States. Thank you, Steph, for sending that over. All things Mets, greatly appreciated here in the UK. But yeah, these OMG Mets are just OMG right now. It feels like the longest week from our last podcast last week. It feels like about 50 things have happened and then nothing's happened at the same time. So we'll go start with the Brewers series, which when we did the pod last week was literally just about to begin. We were moments away from the first game. In that first game, it was an 8-4 win for the Mets. Severino pitched 6 innings. No home runs, not a surprise against the Brewers, but RBIs from Iglesias, Vientos, Winker, JDM, and Marte, bringing home the victory for the Mets. The game overshadowed, possibly, by the Adames-Winker beef, as Winker rounded the bases, was chirping at the Brewers, following an incident at the end of September where he was rather intentionally hit by a pitch. I think he was clapping back, as the youth would say, at the Brewers for that one, which led to Adames threatening to wait outside for Winker, which apparently, according to John Heyman, actually happened, and Winker no-showed. But Adames did wait for him outside the stadium after the game, which is just absolutely hilarious. Real highlight from that first game. Game 2, Brewers brought it back, 5-3 win for them. Manaea was the starting pitcher, 5 innings from him. Again, no home runs for the Mets, RBIs from Lindor, Nimmo, and Alvarez in that one. And then, wow, game 3, real test of the nerves on that one. Mets coming out 4-2 winners. Quintana with 6 innings pitched, 4 runs, all happening in the 9th. Pete with a 3-run home run, silencing any of the doubters who have been on his back this season. Everyone's been waiting for a clutch moment from Pete, and he definitely delivered in that game. After the game, we saw the playoff pumpkin make an appearance. Pete talking about picking that one out in Wisconsin. Nimmo showing sad news about the loss of his grandmother before the game. Thoughts with him and his family through that difficult time for him. Didn't seem to affect him on the field, though, which was definitely interesting. Coming before a game, for him to play the way he did in that game was very impressive. And then after the game itself, Howie Rose with his legendary call of Pete's home run and the footage of that being played on the plane. Howie clearly very emotional from all of that. And what a series. The Mets beat the Brewers in the wild card, make it to the NLDS. Toria, what are your thoughts?
I mean, as if game 1 on that Monday against the Braves was not crazy enough. What are they doing to us? I mean, highlight after highlight after highlight. As what I said, just like emotionally exhausted. I love me some small ball. So I was, home runs can make life a little more straightforward and a little more simple, obviously. But I love to see us just knock them in, get a train. And that's the game for me. That's baseball, right? So I thoroughly enjoyed it. We had the game that I expected us to have on Tuesday. If you remember when we talked about it last week, I said I was hoping that they would roar into Tuesday. and carry on that, kind of ride that wave into Tuesday. But at the same time, it could catch up with them and they could be shattered. And that seemed to hit on Wednesday. It was pretty flat. I don't think it was a massive surprise. And I don't think that anyone can complain about that, given all of the boys have been through. But they got that out of their system. And then Thursday was just absolute insanity. It was just crazy. And there were a couple of things, but I mean, the first thing is, I've been very fortunate in that our friend Anthony Furia has been frequently FaceTiming. So I've been sharing these moments with our friends in the Seven Line. I've been on FaceTime with the groups and stuff. So I've kind of been able to virtually join in with some of the celebrations, which being over here is, really, really, it's really special to be able to do that. I was pouring Prosecco at just gone 3 o'clock in the morning on Friday morning before having to travel. So that perhaps wasn't the most sensible idea I've ever had, but that's what they make us do. I mean, it's just insane, but it's not surprising either. It is just not surprising. It's not that we expect it. I wouldn't say that we expect it, but at the same time, we're not surprised by it because these boys just do not give up. As for the Howie call, I just listened to that on repeat over and over and over again. Not that I, hide my love for Howie so much. Everybody knows I love my Howie, but this is why. It's these moments, and I am I tweeted just earlier because Howie put out a tweet about living postseason life, and we are so lucky that we have him delivering these moments for us. But at the same time, I'm so happy for him that he gets to do it. It's not happened all that often. And we've been fortunate over the past few years. We've had some postseason baseball since kind of 2015. But actually before that, it just didn't happen. So that call and that moment and him having that moment on the plane. And I think more than anything, that just shows the appreciation from the organization for what he does, which I think is, the biggest point of that. It just shows that he's not just sat in a booth delivering it to all of us. The organization appreciates what he does and how great he is at his craft.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think, when the day does eventually come that Howie hangs up. I know you don't want to hear it, but, let's face facts. He's not getting any younger and he is dropping back on the number of games that he's calling. When that does come, I can certainly see the Mets honouring him much like, other greats that they've honoured off the field. I certainly think Steve will be doing something there. The video is very special. If you've not yet seen it, seek it out, go and watch it. It's a lovely watch. Whilst we're talking about the Brewers series, I just want to touch on a couple of things you said there. I think resilience is the key word of this team, and like you said, we've not expected it. We certainly don't expect it. But boy, is it entertaining when it comes. Anyone that knows you online, you're a big to the last out person.
Absolutely.
I think this Mets team are absolutely the definition of that. It's why you can't turn off the game when they are, 2-0 down in the seventh. You can't just go, we've lost this and turn off, because you just don't know what's going to happen with this team. And it's really special. When we're thinking about special, I've talked about my story before. I fell in love with the 2015 Mets around the time of the NLCS. A lot of the footage that we're seeing at the moment, like you were saying with the Seven Line and all the great people out there, everyone, the watch parties at Citi Field and everything that's going on sort of around New York at the moment, for me, it's very nostalgic. It's probably the wrong word to use because it's less than 10 years ago, but it's bringing back all those memories of that time when I was in New York and I was seeing, these fans in bars cheering and chanting onto the Mets and the sort of hype around the team. It's bringing all of that back. And it's a very happy time for me and reminding me as to what made me fall in love with the Mets the very first time. And it's very special. More special, I'd say, than the 2022 postseason was. I feel like we didn't have that same sort of buzz and hype that we're seeing now. There's a lot more people behind the team, behind the OMG, behind everything else that's going on. And I think, I don't want to liken it because the teams are very different. The team now is very different from the 2015 Mets, but
Absolutely.
the hype around the team is the same from what I can tell. And I am absolutely loving every second of what's going on with this postseason baseball. So as we know, the Mets have qualified for the NLDS. We're at the time of recording, this is Monday, so we have played both games in Philly. After the Brewers series, we saw a couple of roster changes that weren't really much of a surprise. We saw McGill come in, Brazaban went out, Kravnik went out. The real shock was Senga returning, which I'll share from the group chat. We were talking about, can Senga possibly return? And I famously, with my prediction, said, there's no way. They're gonna protect him for next season. They're gonna want to make sure that he's fresh so he can go strong in 2025. And lo and behold, within about half an hour of me saying that, Senga starting the first game against the Phillies, which was lovely to see. It's nice that he feels he can contribute. Those of you that don't know and didn't know the story, apparently that's driven by him. He very much asked to be a part of the postseason with the Mets, felt that he was ready, and good on him. It's nice to see that he feels like he's ready to go. I know we saw a limited pitch count from him, which we're going to talk about in just a moment, but real nice to see him as part of the postseason roster. Speaking of postseason roster, we might maybe see a return for Jeff McNeil. He's just had the birth of his second child, which is a girl, so congratulations to the McNeils on that. We've seen a bit of footage of him beginning baseball activities, as they always call it, which just looks like throwing and catching on the field. He said he's hopeful of a postseason return. With all due respect to Jeff, I don't think we really need him right now. Josie Iglesias is playing just phenomenal baseball. We've still got Acuna, who's on the bench as well. He performed well the times we've asked him to. Unless he feels absolutely ready, I wouldn't rush him back. I don't feel like we're in a spot where we necessarily desperately need him. I'll get your take on that in just a second. But then lastly, the bit sort of news, as it was pointed out on social media earlier today, all four teams in the NLDS have played international series games this year. So the Padres and the Dodgers did the MLB international game in Seoul earlier this year before the season really sort of kicked off. And then obviously Phillies and our Mets played the London series. It's just an interesting anecdote that's kind of pointed out that the NLDS is sort of dominated by these international teams this year. So clearly, international travel doesn't affect players, doesn't affect the ability to go deep in a season. Looking at you, Rob Manfred, let's have some more of these international games. What's your thoughts on the news, Toria?
We have to start with the Senga news, right? So it was a complete shock. I absolutely loved that they did that. I mean, by all accounts, it was pretty shocking to Mendoza. He got a call literally like the day before to say that Senga was available. It was always going to be limited pitch. Peterson was already preparing to pitch in that game. So as soon as I heard the news, I was over the moon because we've talked before about how it's so driven by him and how he will only perform if he thinks that he can contribute and he's not going to be a liability, right? So as far as I was concerned, it was win-win. Nobody's faced him all year because we got 5 innings out of him before. And if he's not got it, if he's not on it, you pull him, you've got Peterson waiting. If he is on it and he has got it, it was always going to be limited pitch count. So we got the 2 innings out of him. The talk is maybe 3 innings if there's a game 5. It looks like he will be available for a game 5. Hopefully we won't need one. But he will be available for 3 if we need him. So it was so good to see him back. You could tell at first he was a little... No, I love that he opened up with a ghost fork straight away. No messing, straight in with a ghost fork. So it's really, really promising to see him back. If nothing else, just gives us more flexibility. And, having McGill back on the roster, that was totally expected. I echo the congratulations to the McNeils. As for the travel, absolutely. bring it on. That's why they have massive rosters, so that they can cope with these things. They have to cope with injury. They travel a lot within the US anyway. They're clearly getting better and better at managing it. The events themselves are getting much better. So bring it on. I'm still gutted that they didn't manage to sort something out for next year, but bring it. Just to very quickly touch back on what you were saying about kind of harping back to 2015. It is completely different. And with you saying, about how it kind of brought you back to what made you love the Mets in the first place, that when I bang on about To the Last Out, it's not just something that I say because it sounds good to say it. When I first started supporting this team, it was the grit and the determination, amongst other things, that made me fall in love with them. I love an underdog. I love that fighting spirit. And that has been present throughout, and it still is. But it's just personified now more than it ever has been. And it's just spectacular. The vibes right now are spectacular. And it's great because I get to keep banging on about it, and they keep proving me right. As this, it's we're not going to win every game, but you know that no matter what, you cannot give up on this team because they aren't going to give up on each other. I love it. I'm not doing Kevin Keegan again, for the record.
Okay, all right. It looked like it was going down that route just for a moment.
Absolutely not.
We'll stay away from it for like the fourth week in a row. Okay. After the announcements of the roster changes, we saw the first game in Philly. Mets come out of that 6-2 winners. Senga, as you mentioned, pitched 2 innings. Pitch count was announced to be between 30 and 35 pitches. He threw 31. Started off looking quite nervous to begin with, especially with Schwarber going very long on one of his pitches. He soon settled in, recovered, settled himself down, and looked like the Senga of old. So that was really nice to see. David Peterson, 3 innings after that. And it's worth noting on Peterson, he's arguably been our best pitcher this year. It's definitely up there with some of his outings. And, it's nice to see him get some postseason time in a big match as well. So it was good for him. We then saw Vientos, Nimmo. Oh, no, that's the wrong game. Wrong notes. We then saw no home runs. We saw Vientos, Nimmo, Alonso, JDM, and Marte hit RBIs in that particular game. Mets coming out 6-2 winners in the first game. And then yesterday, game 2, Phillies beat the Mets 7-6. So this was a Severino start, 6 innings pitched from him. Vientos, Nimmo, and Alonso all hitting home runs. 6-all by the middle of the 9th. Philly hitting a walk-off win. So close. And again, going back to what you were just saying there, it's just further proof that you can't give up on them even to the last out. You just don't know what's coming. I think Philly arguably just edged it, but it was a really close game. Despite the scoreline of game 1, that was a close game as well. Not that we were expecting any different. On the last pod, we were talking about how we've kind of got their number, but at the same time, they've got ours. And I think we're going to see a lot of close games. We'll talk about predictions and upcoming in a moment.
Do we dare?
I don't want to. You know me. I can't do predictions, but
we're doing it anyway.
We're doing it anyway. I will be wrong again, but it's fine. But yeah, following the second game, in the media sort of scrum after the game, Harrison Bader talking about how over the last 2 weeks, the Mets have played 10 games in 2 weeks. They've not been home in 2 weeks. And I think he was asked a question along the lines, I'm paraphrasing, along the lines of, how's that been for the team? Have there been any sort of issues and problems? What was nice is Bader was talking very candidly about how he likened it to a travelling circus. Said everyone's just really loving life. There've been no complaints from anyone in the camp whatsoever. Everyone's just really enjoying this pro season. And I think we're seeing that from the players, the smiles on their faces. Everyone looks just genuinely happy to be there and taking part in this postseason. And it was nice that he was able to talk so openly and honestly to the media. It just shows where the team are at. They seem relaxed with everything, even though the seriousness of the games, everything that's on the line, and whether we see that in the upcoming games or not remains to be seen. But just before we get on to the upcoming games, what are your thoughts on the first two games against the Phillies?
Well, I mean, that first game. So Wheeler will always be Wheeler. Right? It was always going to be tough to get anything from Zach Wheeler. And I will never hear a bad word said about him because, he did his thing with us. He went to them. He's solid. He was well up there for Cy Young consideration this year.
Yeah.
And, it was no surprise that it was so tight whilst he was in the game. But you just knew that they would be waiting to pounce the minute he was out of the game.
Yeah.
Loving Swaggy V. He is being the Daniel Murphy of this team, right?
Yeah, that's fair. Yeah.
He is this postseason's Daniel Murphy. And I am absolutely loving that for him, especially where he's come from, the start of the year and the struggles that he's had in and out the past kind of year and a half. To see him contributing so significantly has been amazing. Similarly, we were saying earlier about how Pete is coming through clutch. For me, right now, if I had to say up to this point, MVP of postseason, it's Vientos.
Yeah.
There's no argument. He's digging and digging, and you always trust that something's going to happen when he comes to the plate. I had to apologize multiple times. I was in a bar in Prague watching the first game, which meant that anybody within my vicinity in the bar had to be aware of the game as well. And, I was just kind of going a little bit mental and forgetting where I was from time to time. Also, FaceTiming people, messaging the group. It was just meant, but this is what playoff baseball is all about. Yep. It's so fun. Yesterday could have very easily gone either way. It was, again, up and down and up and down. When I got off the plane and saw that we were up, I was pleasantly surprised. Then we went further ahead. And at that point, I thought maybe we'd lock it down. I was a little bit surprised that we didn't. But they didn't win the division by fluke. No. They are great. Let's not forget that they are a very, very, very good team. And just the same as we know that we can always come back, so can they. They've got that talent. So it's no slight. And I think I said to the group and I said online, if somebody had have offered me a split on Saturday afternoon before first pitch was thrown, I'd have ripped their arm off for it. So, I'm going to have no complaints. There is a bit of needle to it all, which I'm loving, especially Winker. I mean, Winker just, he's just incredible. And I'm so pleased that he's on our team. He is absolutely that guy you love to hate unless he's on your team. So I'm loving that. But there's a nice bit of kind of needle to it all, and I'm quite enjoying that aspect of it as well. Not that I condone violence in any way, shape, or form, but it's just a bit of healthy competition. But it feels it's got that proper edge to it all, and so it's so finely balanced for going into tomorrow.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think that's a nice segue into the last bit. Upcoming games for the Mets. Obviously, we're recording this Monday night. Depends on when you're listening to this. Mets Phillies at Citi Field Tuesday. UK start time is currently set to 10 p.m. Mets Phillies on Wednesday, again at Citi Field, is set for 10 p.m. And then if a game 5 is needed, that takes place in Philadelphia on Friday. Current start time is scheduled for 9 p.m. UK time. I suppose we've got to do the predictions.
Yeah, do it.
Before I get onto that, if again these are all big ifs. If the Mets make it through against the Phillies, the NLCS, which is going to be Padres or Dodgers, the games are currently scheduled for Sunday, Monday, and then Wednesday, Thursday. So if the Mets make it through, I mean, we'll do a pod next week anyway. But if the Mets make it through, we'll be in a similar situation where we'll be able to talk about some NLCS and then look forward to some NLCS as well. Are the Mets going to make it? What do you think? The Mets in 4, 5? What are your thoughts?
4. I think we're taking the next 2 at City. That City Field is going to be epic. So one thing we have to say, the Phillies fans have been dreadful. I don't care.
Yeah.
Come at me. I don't care. They have been dreadful.
Yeah.
When their team haven't been performing, they have been silent. They've been booing. It's just nope. You imagine that happening at City? Not in a million. City is going to be absolutely buzzing. I am devastated that I'm not there. But
same.
Yeah, it's, I would be on a plane tomorrow if I could be. But it is going to be buzzing. And I genuinely think that it's gonna see us through. One of a friend of mine said something along the lines of, let Queens carry you through to the NLDS. And I'm like, that's what's going to happen. We're going to get to City and the City Field crowd are going to roar them in. Then the boys aren't going to want to disappoint in front of their home crowd. And not that they ever do, but it's going to give them that extra push. So I think us in the 2 at City, I don't think we're going to need a trip to Philadelphia.
Okay. This is the part where I'm going to be wrong. I think that trip to Philadelphia is going to happen. I think it's going to go 5. I think we're going to, like you said, I think we're going to split. And then it's just going to come down to nerves on that game 5. Who's got the better handle on the nerves? Met starters on the next couple of games. Quintana is confirmed for the Tuesday game.
Yeah.
Anyone with the brain can work out it's going to be McGill on the Wednesday, just because of where the starters have gone and who's pitched and who hasn't pitched.
I thought maybe we'd have Manaea.
Yeah, but the word is that it's McGill. Manaea being used for that game 5. Whether they feel that he's potentially stronger there, I don't know. That was the chatter that was on social media earlier today.
Okay.
I think it's Mets in 5. If I'm honest, I think we can expect to see some sort of upset in Philadelphia. We'll upset them on their ground.
That would be fun.
It would. I'm not going to do the Keegan thing, but it would just of all the places to do it, of all the games to do it, that would be far superior to doing it in 4 at City. Obviously, I'm going to be wrong. You're going to be right. It's going to be Mets in 4. They're going to do it at City.
And so there are lots of people complaining that we're not prime time in the US. Get all our UK start times.
Yeah.
Absolutely loving it. It is most appreciated. Thank you very much, MLB and the scheduling gods.
The scheduling gods, yes, but the commentary on Fox has been.
I've been listening to Howie, and Keith. For the record, young Keith has been doing a marvelous job. His first postseason, but I've been having the audio on.
Yeah, it's been.
I know it's out of
sync
atrocious. But
it's not the sync. It's the fact that you've got Fox Broadcasting and they are so biased towards the Phillies.
I've not been listening.
It's a joke. The one thing I will say is shout out to David Ortiz, Big Papi himself. He was the only pundit before the game that said the Mets would make it through the NLDS. So shout out to him. Gotta
love him.
Papi. Of course. Who doesn't love Big Papi?
Yeah. Strange people.
And on that note, any closing thoughts to wrap up the pod?
No, just the usual. You know what it is.
What's that?
Let's go Mets.
Let's go Mets.